So good afternoon. My name is Gorman and this is our first day of NERC Virtual 2020. So um, I appreciate all your patience as I'm working. I'm on a learning curve here as far as doing these virtual broadcasts, and we've already had two this morning. The first one at not early, but mid-morning around 9:30, we had Rob Powers from Plymouth, focusing on teaching state and local history using the Massachusetts Chronicle. And then just about an hour ago, we've had a conversation with Ken Davis. So it was a really good start so far. So so I'm going to just talk a little bit about some of the things that I've been doing with my school district, and then I'm going to basically just open the conversation for all of us. So eventually, you will all be able to unmute yourself, and then we can engage. My name is Gorman Lee. I am the K-12 Director of Social Studies for the Braintree Public Schools. Been in Braintree since 2007, and of course this year obviously is a very interesting year, anyways. And we've always had started utilizing technology for teaching and learning in our classrooms, but obviously not to this extent. Last spring, like many of you, our schools had shut down in March 13th, to be exact. We were kind of just thrust into crisis teaching. It wasn't necessarily remote learning type of instruction. It was more like crisis teaching, trying to figure out, okay, how do we get 5,500 kids and 500 teachers to remote learning without any preparation, without any practice in terms of how we deliver instruction. And so it was definitely a trying time. There were many school districts last spring that had gone into synchronous teaching using Zoom, some using Google Meets. We didn't do that in our district. We decided deliberately not to do or engage in any type of video conferencing or web conferencing because we just really did not know, one, how our infrastructure is capable of being able to handle that much bandwidth. We weren't really entirely sure exactly how many students had a device or even had internet access at home. So we were very cautious in terms of moving directly into synchronous learning, teaching and learning last spring. We really wanted to kind of figure out, well, since we knew that other districts were doing that, we were kind of checking to see, okay, what kind of mistakes are they going to have, and then we can kind of learn from their mistakes. And then at the same time, what were some of the really more innovating things that districts were doing, and how can we able to replicate that? So we really focused on asynchronous teaching and learning all of last spring, and we got a lot of criticism from parents because they really wanted their students to be actively engaged with teachers and their peers online. So we understood that that was going to be a major criticism. But at the same time, we wanted to be very cautious because we also heard reports of, people, Zoom bombing or going into chat rooms or to the web live conferencing and doing some, questionable things. So we were just very cautious. But after that, over the summer, we really talked about, you know, what are we going to do in the fall? Because we really weren't sure, especially in June and July. We weren't exactly sure what our lives would be like in September. So we worked all summer to kind of figure out what is the best approach in providing instruction and student and you know, having student learning remotely. So kind of just give you some context in terms of what Braintree is doing right now. So elementary and middle school, they are in hybrid mode. So we have half the class from kindergarten through grade 8. So half the class are attending school on Monday and Tuesday, while the other half is remote. And then Thursday and Friday, the two halves swap. So every student from K through 8 currently, right now, well, not today, but right now, is attending school in person in the classroom 2 days a week, and they would be then doing remote learning 3 days a week. So we're only having classes in session in school in the mornings because we were thinking in terms of like, what do we do with lunch? And you know, we have cafeterias and we can't really bring all the kids in, and we didn't want them to eat in their classrooms. So basically what we've decided to do is that we would have in-class in the mornings, and then by lunchtime, students would pick up their lunch and then they would go home. And then they would eat lunch at home, and then there would be afternoon classes that would be remote. So all of the students would be doing remote learning in the afternoons. Our high school right now currently is full remote for another couple of weeks. Students will be coming in at the high school in a hybrid format. So very similar to like elementary and middle school. Half the class would be in school Monday and Tuesday, while the other half is remote, and then Thursday and Friday is reversed. Wednesday, for all students, it's asynchronous learning. So there are no live classes, maybe with the exception of a few AP classes, but for the most part, Wednesday is asynchronous. So teachers would be pushing out instructions, some pre-recorded presentations, or maybe it's a video clip that they would assign students to watch on that Wednesdays. But teachers would be holding office hours that Wednesday. So any student who has a question can log in to, we use Google Meet for our platform with students and teachers. So students would be able to go into the office hour, and they would be able to have conversations with their teacher. We do have a number of students who are opting for full remote, even though we are in hybrid a platform. Those students who are in full remote, they would follow the same, hybrid remote schedule. They would have an additional asynchronous session each week, rather than, because we have some students that are going in person, but for those students who are in full remote, if they follow that same schedule, they would have an additional asynchronous lesson or instruction. And for those students in the full remote, they would actually go to their teacher's office hours on that Wednesday. So they're at least, they have the additional real-time synchronous conversation with teachers, particularly on the remote. So that's kind of like the general setup in terms of our schedule for the high school. So the students would actually be returning to the high school starting on October 13th. So that's kind of just giving you a sense in terms of what we'll be doing in Braintree. And so some of your districts, you might have that very similar type of schedule or that type, and obviously other districts may be very, very different. So it'd be very interesting, later in this hour, we can kind of share about, what are some of the other districts are doing. But as far as, social studies is concerned, and again, I work with the other curriculum directors in different subject areas, and especially at the elementary level and the middle school level, one of our major concerns, or one of the issues that we've constantly been thinking about, is how do we keep students engaged in their learning remotely. But at the same time, we don't want all of our students to be sitting in front of a computer 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, and the same with our teachers as well. So I've been thinking, with social studies, and I worked a lot with the elementary curriculum in terms of what could we do. But I kind of started off, even though I focused a lot on elementary, I really started focusing with middle school, particularly in 8th grade. We had just started last year the new curriculum that was, through the state framework. So, grade 8 used to be US history, and since last year, we just started kicking off the US and Massachusetts government and civics curriculum in 8th grade. And, I think, at least from September to March, we were actually, going pretty well. We were doing, what we had planned on doing with as far as the curriculum is concerned up until March. But in moving forward for this fall, we had conversations, as an 8th grade team about what we would do in the fall, considering, everyone's still in remote in some fashion, whether it's full remote or hybrid, we didn't know at that time. But again, going back to thinking about how do we keep students engaged, what we decided to do is moving to a project-based approach, or project-based learning approach in 8th grade, knowing that, it is the 2020 presidential election. What we decided to do was, rather than going through the, I guess what you would call traditional path or sequence of lessons in a government and civics course, instead, what we would do is we would have I would say like a 3-month project focusing on the 2020 US election. And so we took the many different content standards from the grade 8 state frameworks, and kind of just like throw it up in the air, and just kind of figuring out how would we present a project from September through November. And we thought that this would, one, address many of the standards in the grade 8 curriculum. 2, by doing a project-based learning approach, this actually, 1, provides the teachers some experience in developing a project. 2, having students experience a project-based unit, and for teachers to observe students in terms of how do they manage, the project, and what worked, what didn't work, and did the project keep students engaged? Did they, are they motivated, and so forth? So it helps us in terms of thinking about the project, because there is that civics project that is still expected by DESE for schools to do this year, even though that we're in a unique situation across the state and across the country. The expectation from DESE is that we would still have the civics engagement project in play. they realize or recognize there are a lot of new challenges for many schools to be able to move forward. But there might be some opportunities for schools to kind of think about some innovative ideas in terms of how you would be able to do it. And I think Desi is going to be doing a keynote session for NERC Virtual in a couple of weeks. So I recommend everyone and encourage everyone to sign up for that. So we were going to put together a 3-month project because we wanted to kind of have that feel in terms of what a project might look like for students. And using the 2020 presidential election was a topic that we thought was timely, and it gives us, again, just an experience of developing projects for students to do. So we weren't going to go with the traditional, scope and sequence with our curriculum, but rather, from September to November, we counted the weeks. So from the start of school, which was September 16th, through Thanksgiving break, there is roughly about 9.5 weeks. And given what we knew about what our schedule might look like and thinking about how much time do students actually spend in social studies under this hybrid format, we were able to kind of gauge like how much time would students be able to study, to learn, and to create towards this project on a weekly basis. And we knew it was going to be tough. And we really still don't know, if we're able to pull it off, but I think we're pretty confident right now. So there are 5 teachers in our 8th grade teams. I have 3 grade 8 teachers in one middle school, 2 in the other. One of the teachers is actually full remote. So that teacher is going to be teaching all of our full remote students in 8th grade. So there are 5 of them. And I put together a summer professional development program workshop over the summer for us to develop this unit. And so we knew that there were 10 weeks, and we divided the unit, this project-based unit, into modules. And what we decided to do was each teacher on the team would be the leader of that module, right? So we have one teacher that's going to be focusing on political parties, the history of political parties, the role that political parties play in the election. We have another teacher that will be focusing primarily on the Constitution and how the election is, how our elections is structured based on what the Constitution presents. We have another teacher that's focusing just specifically on key issues of the election and so forth. And so basically what we were going to do is that all these 5 teachers were actually going to develop and deliver the instruction for our entire 8th grade class. So we have one teacher, Mrs. Ritlin. She will be doing the first module. So she's using Screencastify. They developed the presentations on Google Slides. She would pre-record herself on Screencastify, and we would push that particular presentation to all of our 8th grade classes. So the entire 8th grade is going to receive that one presentation by this one teacher. And then, and the reason why we decided to go this route is because, with 5 teachers and, this curriculum is still relatively new, and focusing on a remote learning environment. And it's, we're thinking of putting together this project-based unit. It's very stressful to trying to construct this entire unit with your students by yourself. So if we were to collaborate, the 5 of us, or actually I'm included, so the 6 of us, to focus on a particular module, each of us with a particular module, it hopefully provides that flexibility among the 5 of them when they are working with their students. So all of the students in the entire 8th grade is going to be receiving the new content with this introductory presentation by one teacher. When students are then going into their classes in school in this hybrid mode, and they're just working, with that particular social studies teacher, they would be kind of like providing the in-classroom activities based on that presentation that students have seen. So because Wednesday is our, as I mentioned before, is our asynchronous day, Wednesday is the day that we actually begin the new module for that week. Because everyone is at home, they're all doing remote learning. It's a screencastify presentation that all students would then watch. There would be an exit ticket, so students would have to submit an exit ticket, so that gives us the attendance to make sure that students have actually seen the presentation. And then as we move into Thursday, and that first half of the class is in school, they are then at least having some type of activity in the classroom, while the other half is doing some asynchronous work based on that Wednesday's presentation. And then we kind of repeat it again on that Monday because the 2 halves have swapped. So that is kind of like our thinking in terms of how we push out and deliver the instruction on a weekly basis. So, so again, knowing that we have about 9 weeks between now and Thanksgiving, what we wanted to do was to, we put together, like 6 modules, whereas, each module is about a week and a half. As we go through the project, by the time it's election day, we would then have a couple of more weeks for students to actually construct their project. So I would say like the 3 weeks after election day would be the period where students would construct their project, and then there might be some type of virtual showcase just prior to Thanksgiving. So that was our initial thoughts in terms of like what this project would entail. And again, using 2020 election, it's relevant. It could be very interesting for students, especially if they wanted to focus on a key issue that is in the election. Some students might want to focus on the election process, or maybe having a project focusing on mail-in voting or the Electoral College. And then, there's also a project opportunities for students to focus on candidates. And it's not just necessarily presidential candidates. It could be a senatorial candidate or a candidate running for Congress. So we're allowing students a lot of choice in terms of the focus of what their project might be in November. So that's kind of like just an overview in terms of like what we're doing, at least with 8th grade. With the other grades, like at the elementary level, very similar approach, So I've had meetings with every grade from kindergarten through high school, talking about the project-based approach, knowing that there's about 9.5 weeks between now and Thanksgiving. And, I felt that there's so much going on, and there's a lot of stress, not just among teachers, but among students. And in thinking about the full year, I basically kind of encourage teachers, don't don't think about past Thanksgiving just yet. Think about between now and Thanksgiving, and think about what is it that you really want students to learn in this environment, at least through Thanksgiving. And so we focus a lot in late August and even early September about just these first 10 weeks of classes. And if they work together and did the same like what the 8th grade teachers are doing, it really relieves their burden in trying to develop instruction for the entire school year by themselves. Work together, share each other's presentations, and so far there are a number of elementary teachers. Our 9th grade teachers are doing the same thing, and they found that, wow, we are doing a project. I really only had to develop 2 weeks out of that 10 weeks because I know the other teachers are doing the other weeks, and we're just sharing our presentations together. And doing the Screencastify presentations, you only have to do it once. You don't have to do it 5 times, for each section. You just have students watch this presentation on the Wednesday when everyone's asynchronous. And the days that you're meeting with students on Google Meet or the days when you're meeting students in person, you don't want it to be a teacher-centered instruction. You want those times when you're really interacting with students, you want them to do the talking because it's the only chance that they're able to ask questions. It's the only time maybe where you can actually check for student understanding. So you didn't want to use the in-person time or the Google Meet time, the synchronous time, where the teacher just talks for the whole time. You want the students to talk. So the asynchronous Wednesdays is the perfect time where you can actually push out a presentation, or if you wanted students to watch a video for 20 minutes, and using Edpuzzle. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Edpuzzle, but it's a great tool to have, because you can throw in prompts throughout the video, and students have to type in their response before they can proceed with the video. So there's a lot of things that you could do asynchronously in terms of delivering instruction, but then that time when you're actually interacting, it's students giving you the information about them, like where they are at with their learning, what questions they have, and an opportunity for students to work with each other, even in a virtual environment. And so hopefully, over the course of the next couple of weeks, we'll figure out how this works out with our students. Sometime around October, later this month, we will then start thinking about what are we going to do with our classes past Thanksgiving through February. And actually, there's a few of my staff who are actually already started doing that. They said, "Oh, we got our project in place for Thanksgiving." This is just before students actually began their classes. So that was like 2 weeks ago. So they're all feeling good. They don't have to worry about thinking about, oh, what am I going to do with my students next week? Because they've already got it all set up for their 10 weeks. Now they're moving forward to December and January. And I told them that just don't think about for the whole year. Just think about it in chunks. Make it manageable, and again, working together collaboratively. It just takes so much off your plate individually, and then we kind of just take it from there. And thinking about different kinds of projects that we would do later in the school year, because the election would be over by November, by Thanksgiving, and now we would think about what other types of projects would we put together for our students in each of our classes. I did provide teachers in all grade levels the different kinds of projects that they could look at. So we thought of a lot of our themes, whether it's U.S. history or world history, government and civics, geography. For instance, for geography, we focused on environment, climate change as being one potential project that we would that we would have students focus on. The other one is on the theme of movement and thinking about the movement of people, migrations, and looking at the economic and political implications and consequences of movement. Even talking about the pandemic in terms of how the virus had moved from China and across the world, and how it became a global pandemic, and taking a look at the relationships of these various different concepts, with the economy and politics and so forth. We also think about the movement of ideas. So, as people move across the globe, they bring their ideas with them, and we talk about the cultural movements through geography. We talk about pollution, so we can talk about, even a few years back when we focused, when we had the earthquake in Japan and the nuclear reaction as a result of that earthquake, and how, the radiation has impacted the environment, particularly all, life in the Pacific Ocean. Or even more recently on the fires on the West Coast, and how, that smoke has eventually moved over into the East Coast only, a week later. And so we talk about the effects of pollution or natural events, and how geography plays a role. And so that could be potential projects that students can focus on, at least in our geography classes, particularly at the middle school, and as well as also in AP Human Geography. The other topic that we would focus on as a potential project would be the history of protests. We also talk about the underrepresented voices in American history. So we're providing all these different types of topics and that teachers can explore, and then providing opportunities for students to explore as well. And so one of the big challenges is just, identifying the content topic standards in our frameworks, as well as the history and social science practice standards, and also our literacy standards. But we feel like this project-based approach is really a great way for students to stay motivated, hopefully, staying motivated to learn. And at the same time, we are addressing the framework standards. So it is, again, not a traditional approach to delivering our curriculum as we would in other years, but given the fact that, there is a lot more time for students to really have, they need to learn how to manage their time learning. We wanted to make sure that students stay on top of their own responsibilities for learning. And also, in a selfish way, we really hope that, we can provide a project where students want to learn social studies, that they'd rather spend more time on social studies than math. So that's some of our approach to this year in terms of how we would deliver social studies in these times. We're also relying a lot on digital resources. We not trying to endorse any products or anything, but we have subscribed to Newsella, along with our science department and the ELA department. But that has become a resource for teachers, a digital resource, so that teachers and students are able to access. And it's a good way to incorporate current events into the project. Even, focusing with ancient civilizations, and to some extent, early world history, we're always looking for themes and the broad concepts and trying to make those connections between what they're studying and what is going on in the world today. So you know, again, having current events as a way to apply or to make those connections is something that, you know, our teachers are continually trying to improve in terms of what kinds of activities and assignments that we can provide for our students, synchronously and asynchronously as well. And one of the nice things about Newsela is that they do have provide current events that are connected to particular periods, historical periods, even way back to the ancient civilization times. So it does make it a little easy for us to be able to make that connections. So yeah, I'm gonna stop at this point. It's about 1:07. And what I'll do is I'm gonna see if I can do this. Okay, you can unmute yourself if you want. If you wanted to share what are some of the things that you did this summer in preparing for this fall that's working well, or some of the challenges that is nagging you right now. So if you want, feel free to chime in. Basically, you can just hold down the space bar on your keyboard. That just gives you the temporary unmute. So if anyone would like to talk or chime in or ask questions, the floor is yours. No one? Or are there any questions? And what I can do later is I can share with you some of the things that we've done as far as like presentations. Is no one able to unmute? Let me see if I can unmute everyone. Let's see. Hold on. I thought. How's that? Did everyone? Oh, okay.
Hello.
Hi. How are you? Yeah, I'm learning.
You wouldn't let us unmute.
Sorry about that. Okay, I think people can unmute now. So all right. So who would like to speak? I think actually everyone's unmuted right now. So you can self-mute if you want and wait until you want to ask, and then we can move forward. But who would like to begin?
So go ahead, Thomas. Looked like you had something to say.
Oh, I was just going to ask Gorman or any of you, how have your technical difficulty or encountering them been? We're much better than the spring, but we're still running into some glitches here and there.
Yeah. So So again, like what we did over the spring, you know, we didn't do any synchronous like live web conferencing type of thing. It was all asynchronous because we weren't really sure exactly how we would proceed. So over the summer, we mobilized, you know, making sure that every student had a device. So we did, you know, like these pickups where parents can drive to their schools, pick up a device for their child. Any student or family that do not have internet access, they were able to pick up a hotspot. We provided a hotspot for those families so they could take that with them as well. I mean, so far, so good, you know. I mean, one of the things that we did say to many, not only just students, but also to teachers as well, and this is something that I've experienced doing these Google Meets and Zooms, is that if you have the opportunity to connect your laptop or device to the modem, have it wired versus wireless, you have a much better live streaming experience. It's much faster. It's much more stable. So wherever there's an opportunity, If you use a desktop at home that's connected to the wire, to the modem, you're better off in terms of the connection versus doing this wirelessly, because over time your computer will just lag. So teachers notice there is a difference in that as well. We do have experiences, not necessarily because of us, but because of Google. Because you can imagine there are hundreds of thousands of other schools, millions of students and teachers logging in to Google, that you do have to expect that students will be kicked off, or teachers will be kicked off. So we've had a couple of those instances, but teachers have kind of said that students were actually pretty good. If they got kicked off, they got back on, which we were like, okay, that's good. That's really good. Now let's see if teachers do that. And teachers do, and they kicked off, they kicked back on. And I basically try to tell, at least my staff, it's okay if things happen. Don't get too stressed out by it, because this is the first time for a lot of us, and you can't expect everything to go very smoothly on the first try. And as long as you have that attitude, it's not going to be the end of the world, which I think causes a lot of anxiety with teachers, and maybe perhaps with students as well. We felt very comfortable as far as like the asynchronous aspects of instruction, because we did that last spring. So right now, the focuses, how do you create breakout rooms with Google Meets? And even that itself is a little quirky right now. But I think teachers are getting used to managing the technology while they're teaching. There's still a lot of things that that remains to be seen, but I just say you just have to take it a day at a time, 1 week at a time, and things will be all right. I think overall people will understand that sometimes technical glitches and things not going the way you want it is almost the same as a plan that you laid out in the classroom, and that didn't work out because of a fire drill or whatever. So I think it's all about attitude and just learning the mistakes as we move along. Is there anyone else who would like, Jay, did you have a question? Is there any other questions that other people had? Oh, you can't unmute? Oh, let me see. I don't know why.
All right, perfect. I was going to say one of the challenges I'm having is Lincoln's a really small district, so there's only 2 8th grade teachers, for example, across the whole district, and only 3 7th grade, and those are the 2 grades that I teach. And the model that we're running is we're keeping the same 12 to 14 kids with us all day long, and so we're building out lesson plans for all of our colleagues to be able to execute, who are not necessarily social studies educators or have any social studies background since they were probably in high school. And so the challenge for us has been trying to co-plan efficiently enough to do that, because it's a totally new model. So there wasn't really an ability over the summer to hyper prepare for that. And so I'm spending huge amounts of time, far more than usual, basically making substitute-like plans every day of the week, and still trying to have an enriching social studies curriculum, because we all know that our subject is not always a huge priority, as you sort of already alluded to, Gorman. And I don't want to further discount that by giving them these kind of fluff or nutter exercises just to kill time. And so I'm still sort of holding out hope at some point maybe that either the model will alter a bit, or we can do a better job as math teachers to collaborate across the state, maybe post some of those types of modules that your group is doing, Gorman, or things that we're building out, so that address the standards that we all have to teach. And that way there, none of us are having to recreate the wheel every time we walk into our classrooms.
Yeah. So basically in your school district, so you're a 7th grade teacher, correct?
I teach 7th and 8th. Yep.
7th and 8th, and so you're basically with the same group of students all day long. So you're actually delivering math, English, science.
Yeah. So I take the lesson plans that my colleagues are creating, and so I sort of act like I see myself as like a elementary teacher and a middle school teacher at the same time,
Right.
and having both of those responsibilities is a lot.
Yeah, no, that is a challenge. Yeah, in our middle school, so our students stay in the same room, but the teachers rotate. So we do teams. So we have a team of that consists of a social studies teacher, science teacher, English teacher, and a math teacher. And so the teachers rotate the 4 rooms. So the students stay, and the teachers go into each room, and they deliver their instruction. So that allows the teacher to be able to spend that time with their students, really focusing on a particular activity in social studies classes. So they have the four classes, and then in the afternoon, everyone goes home at lunch, and then they have their afternoon classes. And of course, that rotates too, because those students who have remote in the afternoon would eventually have their morning classes the following day. And so that's how we went about it. So I don't know if that is something in which your school had considered, where you have the teachers rotate. And that way you would only be focusing with just the social studies with those particular classes. But
yeah, Anthony was bringing that up in the comments. We did it for like a health and safety measure so that we would reduce possible transmission. So if anyone in a particular cohort gets sick, only that cohort would then have to quarantine rather than a whole grade level or the whole school. So from that standpoint, it's been really effective because we haven't had real issues in that situation. But in addition to that, in my district, there's also most teachers only teach 1 grade level.
Yeah. So
that would be a little bit less planning on my part if I wasn't supporting 2 different grade levels.
Yeah. And then we have one teacher who is full remote. She's not coming into school, but she's focusing with all the full remote students. So even though we're in hybrid, we have a good number of kids, and 8th grade is our large class, very large class. So one of the other things that as the team was thinking about developing was we would be doing again screen castified presentations for presenting and delivering new instruction. So when it comes to new content, that's when asynchronous mode kicks in. And we only have, when you think about like the whole week and with your students, with this hybrid mode, you're really only meeting your students once a week. Like you're only meeting this, like my section A class. I only see them on Monday. Half of them on Monday. The other half is on Friday. And that's it. All the rest of the time, they're remote. Whether we're remote in the afternoon on the other days, it's asynchronous on Wednesday. So it doesn't really give you a whole lot of time with that interaction with your students live in the classroom. So again, the thinking was, what exactly do you want to do with your students in the classroom at that time? Because that's the only time you have per week. And if there's only 9.5 weeks, you're only meeting them 9 times until Thanksgiving. So you really want to make the best use of that time with your students in person. And that we have about, I would say like 50 minutes with those students, with half those students. And then when we meet with them, during remotely in the afternoons on the other days, it's only a half an hour. It's not even really a long a lot of time. So that's one of the other things, like we had to frame like exactly how much time do students really spend in social studies. That's why we thought this project-based approach was a better approach, because hopefully that project puts the students in the driver's seat of learning the material. We just need to provide as many resources for them as possible. We try to create essential questions for students to kind of do the investigation and doing the research during their time as they're learning the material by themselves or asynchronously. And you know, will it work? We don't know yet. You know, I'll have a better answer by December. You know, as we reflect and think back about, you know, like what was some of the things that went well and didn't. And again, we don't know exactly what our lives will look like in December. And that's the other reason why I said don't think past Thanksgiving, because we don't know what's going to happen in December. We could all be shut down again and be full remote again. So it wouldn't make sense trying to plan anything past Thanksgiving, not knowing what our lives would look like. So, but that is the challenge. And I think, you know, like even like in when I think about the elementary teachers, you know, we did the same thing, you know, where, so we have like 6 elementary schools, school buildings, and we have I maybe have like 5 or 6 teachers in each elementary that teach all subjects, including social studies. We basically, you know, approach social studies the same way. There's one school out of the 6 that are focusing on holidays for grade 1 that all the other schools will then take or use for their grade 1 classrooms. So that it's not all grade 1 teachers having to do something for their own students. And they kind of really start, now they're getting, I think, maybe a little overboard, like, oh, I have this, you know, great, you know, activity and I'm going to share that. And it's actually working well. Teachers really appreciate having to, I don't have to do the, you know, I don't have to develop the holidays unit because it's there. Someone else from this other school is doing it, and that's what we're going to use. And they're just taking turns developing their own units in a more of a task-based or a project-based approach. And they just said it helps because they don't have to, you know, they can spend time developing, you know, lessons in other subject areas. Whereas, you know, social studies, it's something that they can just pick up and modify for their own. So let's see. I think it was Anthony, right? Let me see if I can unmute him. Okay.
Hi. So yeah, I teach in Boston, and I teach at a school for immigrants, like Boston International High School. So I teach history to 10th grade. And in my school, like everybody's an English language learner. And the way our school is structured, history and science classes are not leveled for English language ability. So, you know, I'll have anywhere from, you know, level 1 kid to a level 5 mix all in my same room. And delivering direct instruction is really difficult because it's really hard to keep everybody on the same page. So one thing that I've been doing, and it seems like Gorman, you guys are doing that in Braintree, is creating, like video lessons, right? So all my direct instruction, I just make a video for it. You know, like taking notes, any kind of lecture slides, anything like that. And it differentiates itself because kids can slow it down. Like I'll record myself using QuickTime, post it onto YouTube. They can slow it down. There's captions for them. They can speed it up. You know, there's lots of different, it's really good at differentiating for the English language levels. And then I'm largely making it like self-paced. So I'll have like, you know, multiple lessons, and I'll have like, you know, we need to finish this unit by this day.
Yeah.
Right. And then, you know, the higher level kids, they can work more quickly and they can do maybe some extension activities. Right. And then the lower kids, I'll have like specific assignments that they need to do at that time. And I have usually like a tracker, and it's like, this is, you're on pace, you're behind, you're ahead, you know, like that. Yeah. And so that's worked well in that regard. But some of the complications are we follow the hybrid model, similar to what you are doing. And since I teach in a school where a lot of the kids have been designated high priority, so we're already coming back, even though regular high school kids don't come back until mid-November.
Yeah.
We're already back. We started this week. And so, we follow the same thing, like Monday, Tuesday group, and then we have a Thursday, Friday. Everybody's remote on Wednesday. But what we're doing is everything is simultaneous. So in my classroom, I'll have a few kids in my classroom, but I also have my Zoom kids too. And that's been the real challenge. Like I have my Bluetooth headphones and, I'm helping my students in my classroom in front of me, but then I'm also, helping, I'm hearing kids on Zoom talking and asking me questions and stuff like that. So going back and forth has been difficult for this week, and I need to come up with a better solution for how to do that. So that's been the big challenge there.
Yeah, we had that conversation in our district too, with regards to, our full remote students. So, let's say for instance, we have an economics teacher. Same thing, you have half the class coming in on Monday, the other half coming in Friday, and then you have another group that are full remote. And so the question is, how do you involve the full remote students as part of the class? And you want to try to make sure that they have as much opportunities that as the other students who are actually in school. And so we had that conversation of like, do we set up a laptop with a camera and put it on the teacher, so when he's teaching economics, he has his class, and then he has his students on a Google Meet, and we weren't sure if we could do that because we didn't know if we had the bandwidth. If every class is going to be doing that, we don't know if that's going to break, our network. So we're actually going to do a pilot with just a few teachers to try it out. And in thinking about the subject area, the school decided, okay, let's do math because it's really more about, they think that math, and teachers are putting together, problems on the board or whatever. That's, I guess they think it's more important, I guess. So we're gonna figure out how that works. The other approach we had was, okay, well, the teacher could record himself and then post that, for students who are doing full remote. So it may not be live interaction, but at least they'll be given that instruction, like that presentation. And then, as we said, those who are in full remote, they do have to go to their office hours. So at least there is some additional time for them to interact with the teacher, or if they have a question, they can do that. So that's where we're at. Because we didn't, because we figured it would be very challenging as far as the managing of your students. You have students in class, and then you have students on full remote. And of course, if you only have one monitor, you need your computer to do other things as well. So the other thought was, okay, you get a second monitor. You have to, if you're doing that, ask the technology department to provide you with a second monitor. So that monitor is only for those students who are in the full remote, and then you have the main monitor to do the things that you need to do in class. So your window is not like consumed by students that are connecting online. Even just in terms of like our full remote, or when teachers are teaching their classes remotely in the afternoon, it's kind of very similar to like what I'm kind of doing here. It's like, and then you can kind of like unmute particular students, or the students can raise their hand if they had a question. And again, it's a learning curve. I don't know if that provides you with any ideas, but I don't know if anyone else has any ideas or.
I just have one question for the group, and maybe you can put it in the chat. I'm just curious what your district's policy as far as students using their cameras, like in being on in front of you. I have some misgivings because, you know, a lot of my students are pretty impoverished and, you know, having the background and things like that,
Yeah.
you know, being visible. But I'm just curious, like if you guys are having your students turn their cameras on, in what cases? Is it required? Is it optional? I'm just curious about that.
So by default, we do ask students to have their cameras on, but we give allowances to students to request not to have their cameras on. We do give tips to students, you know, like, you know, we in our expectations sheet, we say to students, we just say, make sure your background is appropriate. And we would give tips by saying, you know, if at all possible, sit where the wall's behind you, and that's it. You know, but we also do tell students, like, if you wish not to have your camera on, talk to your teacher. And we tell the teachers, you know, if they request not to have their camera on, you know, don't push back. But in terms of making sure that they're attentive, we say to them, okay, if you want your cameras off, you can have your cameras off, but you should raise your hand every like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, so we know that you're being attentive. So on Google Meet, you know, they have the, you know, the, you can do a reaction, you can do like a thumbs up, or you can raise your hand. And they said, you know, if you just raise your hand every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes, then we know that you're online. Then, you know, we kind of do like the honor code, the honor system. And so, you know, we do make sure that we provide that students that option if they don't wish to, because we understand that, you know, there are some kids who are impoverished, you know, and of course I've seen, you know, news reports. I think it was down in Florida where they're saying like, you know, you see the parent drinking, or, you know, they're not clothed in the background, they're walking by, and so, you know, we understand, like, hey, you know, the background is very important, so let's try not to be as distracting as possible. But we do say, you know, like, if at all possible, you know, make sure you're seated right up against the wall, so that when you are, all what people see is the wall. So, but yeah, it's something that we'll continue learning, you know. Anyone else would like to say anything about that, or let me know if you can't unmute yourself, because then I can try to do that. Is there anyone who wants to speak? You can let me know. Any other? Let me see. Who would like to speak? Martha, would you like to speak? Do you want me to unmute you? I don't know why I can't unmute everyone.
Okay, wait, let me get here. Let me get my face on here.
Oh.
Okay, so there I am. So yeah, my district has, well, actually not similar. We seem to be going more to school more than most. We have the two cohorts, and they go every other week, and we go for 5 days. So 5 days on, then that group goes home, another group comes in. Then there's, like, in any given class, there's 4 or 5 full-time remotes, and a couple who come to school every day, because they need to come to school every day. So and so I've last week, my I guess my epiphany last week was get a second screen, and I at least to sort of talk to the kids. At the same time, I'm kind of manipulating my desktop to do slides and things like that, and that definitely makes a difference, because I can see them and they can see me a little bit better, and that helps. But what I'm struggling most with is I want the kids to connect with each other. I mean, like, if I'm trying to teach the two groups at once, you almost get the worst of both worlds. Like you want to have kids. So I'd be curious if anyone has any suggestions for just group work, other than, I mean, you can put them into Zoom breakout rooms and that helps. But like, yeah, I liked your idea of projects, and I'm thinking, click, click, click. How can I do some projects for US History 1? And what would be like a good 2-week module? So that's where I am. I'm just like still working it out. But right now I feel like I'm about a half hour ahead of the kids this year. So that's where I stand.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, you know, half an hour is actually a luxury. There are some teachers who are just like that, right? They're about a minute ahead of the kids, especially those who are not used to the, you know, managing technology.
Mhm.
But yeah, I really strongly feel about, you know, with project based. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of front loading. You know, there's a lot of preparation and putting all of that together. But I'm telling you, like once you have that in place, it's like it makes it a lot easier as actually, you know, delivering the instruction, because you start seeing students doing what they're supposed to be doing, hopefully. And it helps you to kind of really focus with particular students who need the support, because, you know, the other students are engaged in their work, working on a particular project.
What was the resource you said you bought and were sharing with the
Yeah.
science? What was
Newsella.
what is it?
Newsella.
What is it? Newsella.
Yeah,
Spell
Newsella.
that? Or put it in the chat.
Put it in the chat here. Newsella. So what I like about Newsella, it's really for elementary through high school, and it's kind of like Scholastic's News, you know, because it provides a lot of like current events, articles, and reading for nonfiction material. What I also like about this is that you can set the reading level. So let's say you have an article that's really, you know, initially intended for, let's say, 8th grade students, but you can set that reading level to a 6th grade level for certain students, so they can read the same article, but it's rewritten for a 6th grader. Or you can adjust it to a 9th grader. So any of the high performing readers, if they can read above reading level, you can set it up to a higher reading level for, you know, 9th grader, and you can monitor their students' comprehension skills with that particular article. So having the full access of Newsella allows you, with a lot of other tools that you can use to assign that article reading. If you have Google Classroom, you can just basically post it, you know, from Newsella right into Google Classroom, so students are able to pick up that article. There's probably, you know, some type of assignment that you can provide, and then you can, you know, so again, and then it also provides some current event articles to whatever historical period that you are that students are studying and learning. So it's kind of an interesting, you know, we just started exploring this, and so a lot of teachers are going to be very interested in using this more. But yeah, I mean, and it's actually more cost effective than, you know, subscribing to Scholastic News for every single grade level, and so on and so forth. So we're still at this exploratory period, and thinking about what kinds of resources would we want to keep even after all this, you know. So yeah, check out Newsella. So, all right. Okay, so I think this is it. So hopefully you were able to get a lot out of this session. What I'm going to do is, let me see if I can find this here. I have the, see if I can find it. No, of course I can't find it when you need it most. Let me see if I can find it. There is a, or I could probably send you the link. The survey, the feedback survey for this session. But hopefully, again, you enjoyed this time. And if you don't have any other questions, 2 o'clock we have David Hudson speaking, and then 3:30 we have Dan Osborne, and that would be it for today's session. And then tomorrow we have Lamerty Frazier, we have Robert Cordy, who's going to be talking about the interrelationship between the independent judiciary and a free press. That is very interesting. I highly recommend. And then we also have Barbara Berenson, who will be focusing or talking about the women's suffrage movement, or the Equal Rights Amendment from 1920 to 2020. So that is also a very interesting topic to listen to. And then of course we have our workshops for the rest of the month. So hopefully, you know, the registration deadlines from next week's sessions have been closed, but starting on October 13th, all of those workshops, those registrations are still open, so you can you know, sign up. And so yeah, so that's it. So far as everything's going all right. All right, well, thank you very much. Have a great Sunday, and maybe I'll see you around in the other sessions later today and this month. All right, thank you.